It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
I'm Hope Madden.
And this is It's Movie Time.
It is.
And boy, it's Quentin Tarantino time.
It is. Happy QT Day.
Oh my gosh, I've been waiting all summer. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Hope, here's a really general question. There are several people in our audience who do not really know Quentin Tarantino.
Wow.
I think it's true. At least
I'm sure
people
that
I've
is true.
inquired,
Sure.
they've heard his name, but they don't know. What is a Tarantino film?
You know, it's funny because he has definitely some thumbprints that he leaves on a film. I mean, you can expect sort of rapid-fire kind of machine gun dialogue, a lot of very stylized violence, a really, really important soundtrack that's going to get stuck in your head for days. But, you know, and also just homages left and right to other movies. You know, his films each have a very distinctive style that borrows, very sort of generously from specific types of films, from a spaghetti western or you know, things like that. And what I think is really interesting about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a mash note to Hollywood, is that he, from scene to scene to scene, borrows from a different style, you know?
Yes, he does. And of course, even if you're not interested in his narrative or his mashups, just his production design is just out of this world.
It is. It's gorgeous.
His recreation of 1969 is astonishing.
It is. You know, it's funny because I think one of his great strengths is world building, and but it's always, of course, to a degree, fictional world. In this case, boy, he really, you know, put himself to a challenge to recreate, you know, August 1969 Hollywood, and man, does he do it.
And you know, one part of his genius for me is that underneath this somewhat long, 2 hours and 41 minutes, film, which doesn't bother me, could bother other people because he does take it slow at times, is that there's something running underneath this which has to do with the Mansons.
Yes.
You know, I mean, because most of us sitting in the audience knows exactly what he's aiming at, or what it's going to end up in the Manson murders.
Right.
There is something that colors the nostalgia, the benign nostalgia of this.
Yes. Yeah, it gives it some bite, doesn't it? And a sense of dread. There's this darkness underneath, because it is such a nostalgic tribute to a certain era in Hollywood. But he also, I think, parallels, you know, with which is 50 years ago this summer, the Manson family crimes, which really marked the end of flower power, the end of an era.
Sure.
And he's also looking at the same time period in Hollywood production as the end of the studio system, the end of this era of like the big cowboy TV shows, and I think that you know, it's funny because there's a sweetness to this film that I've never seen in a Tarantino film.
I'm with you all the way. I called it milder and gentler.
Yes.
So if anybody has reservations about his much done violence and so on, it isn't here.
Not really. And you know, there's what violence you see during the first 2 hours and 15 minutes of the film is fisticuffs. You know, because Brad Pitt plays a stunt double, and so there are some, but they're fun mainly, you know. And then of course, when he does get to the real violence, it's quite violent, but it is not what you expect it to be, not at all.
No, it is not. You gotta love when Brad Pitt goes nose to nose with
Bruce Lee.
With Bruce Lee.
That's a funny scene. That's a funny scene.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And I think Pitt has never been better.
Yeah, he's great in this. DiCaprio, too. I mean, DiCaprio, and you've come to expect it from him.
Yes, you do.
But one of the things, you know, I think before The Revenant, my favorite DiCaprio performance was in Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, because it was such a different role for him. This vainglorious, stupid man.
Yeah.
And then I think that one of the things I thought about this film, which made me think of several of his other performances, when there's a little bit of comedy to his role, some insecurity, some goofiness, you can see him shine in a way that I think most of his roles don't let him.
Yep. And I always remember him more lightly in Catch Me If You Can.
Sure.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, sure.
You know, when Johnny and I on Cinema Classics did a face-off between the two, we found DiCaprio the better actor of the two.
I think so, although you know what, I think he is not underrated or underestimated. I think Brad Pitt is. You know, I think if you watch Tree of Life, for example, Brad Pitt was magnificent in that film.
Wonderful choice, and I agree with you. and he selects those himself.
Yes.
He underplays himself.
He does.
Which is part of his charm, particularly for this film.
Yeah, yeah.
He's just kind of casually hanging out. A guy at 55 who looks pretty darn good.
Yes, he does.
Oh.
And it's funny because I think that the film gets Tarantino gets some guff for the way that his camera ogles Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie. But one of the things I've noticed about the film is that not to the same, he doesn't spend as much of the screen time doing it, but his camera really loves Brad Pitt. Not that any camera doesn't, but I mean, he really goes out of his way. And a lot of times he actually mirrors shots where he's following Sharon Tate and you're looking at her boots and her legs and her butt. And then he does the exact same thing with Brad Pitt. Of course, the only nudity, Brad Pitt just climbs up on a roof and takes his shirt off for no good reason, except for we can go, oh no, he looks good.
That was required. That was required. You knew that was coming. And there are, of course, quirks that are just totally delightful. Like, what is Tarantino's thing about feet and boots?
He's got a serious foot issue. And it's funny, I think the only film that focuses more on feet is Kill Bill Volume 1, but there's a good reason for it, right? Because she comes out of a coma and she's trying to teach her body to move again, and she starts with her feet.
Right.
But wow, it's on display in this one. Just feet.
And I think this is close behind Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill. To me, in the hierarchy of his films.
It is a funny thing, because I think that's what we've all done. It's like, okay, let's rank them.
Right.
And the funny thing about it is, Death Proof is not a very good film. It's like a 3-star film. It's not a very good film. It's easily the bottom. Any place else is shades of gray. You got Pulp Fiction on top, and then if you're any place else in there, you may be at number 8, but you're still better than any of the other movies that are out there.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And when we see my grade, with a little bit of a ding, how could I even dare to do that? But what I'm doing is I'm comparing with his other films.
Right.
So it's almost as if he has a world of his own.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I felt the running time. There's nothing I didn't enjoy watching, but I thought, I'm not sure how many times I need to sit for 7 solid minutes with Brad Pitt in a car listening to the songs of 1969.
And Hope, for me, the recreation of the TV Westerns.
Yeah.
Drag, except for that little girl who was really good.
Oh, what a scene stealer was she. And that dog. That was the other scene stealer. No, that little girl was spectacular.
But he lingers.
Yeah.
But that's Hollywood these days, and particularly
indulgent.
With an A-plus director like this. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anybody sitting out there who's going to tell him you ought to cut it down.
No, I don't think there is.
but I'm with you. It's just a bit long.
It is.
But I've still, compared with everything else that's out there.
Right.
Well, Hope, I feel we have moved toward the point where we have to award our grade.
I think so, too.
What grade are you going to give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
An A-.
And I'm with you. Yeah. You knew that. We have our slight reservation. But, man, for our audience, if you're uncertain about going, go. I think it's not going to offend anyone. And I think that he is one of the premier writer-directors of our time.
Absolutely.
And that one should just experience it to be in the culture.
I agree with you, and I think if you're nervous about going to a Tarantino film, this is the one to see.
Wonderful. Yep.